Now, the warnings have been loud, clear, and consistent. The deadly coronavirus is real and it's here with us. The measures to stop the spread and flatten the infectious curve have equally been severe and served with a firm hand. A dusk to dawn curfew has been imposed in Kenya's territory, and the larger Nairobi metropolitan area is in containment. So are the three coastal counties, gripping Kenya's key economic gateways. And yet, the number of infections and deaths keep rising each time the authorities step out to address the nation. A handful of recoveries accompanying the heavy news, offering a glimmer of hope that we can and indeed shall overcome. But despite the measures, it will appear that laxity in law enforcement here and reckless public behavior there threaten the small gains made in this full-blown war. With every passing minute of life in these extraordinary times, rises the effect, now reflecting the country's battered calendar of events, constitutional processes and programs. Now, team coverage Wednesday is still counting the cost of the global pandemic that knows no boundary and respects no race or even authority. Our special coverage tonight crosses the border to the East Africa region. Coming up in the news broadcast tonight.
Tonight,
7 people have tested positive for the coronavirus disease. All the 7 are Kenyans.
The numbers are at 179 as government announces additional measures for salons and barbershops. Also tonight, when night gathers, their watch begins. The businesses thriving in the dark despite the darkness of the COVID-19 pandemic. Plus, how the coronavirus is changing funeral rites, mourning and grief as its first victim is finally laid to rest. And also tonight,
a crisis in education has a lifetime impact.
The school calendar is in limbo and the children have an extended break. On team coverage tonight, we're still counting the cost of the pandemic.
Live from the Nation Center, this is NTV Tonight with Ken Mijungu.
Hello and welcome to the broadcast. Our sign language interpreter tonight is David Agundoa. Let's bring out your team coverage warriors for the night. Here in Nairobi is our business editor, Julian Samboko, health reporter, Eunice Omolo, education reporter, Sharon Baranga, Leila Mohammed, and our business and technology reporter, Victor Kiprop. From Eldoret is Lois Wangoi, while Kevin Mutai joins us live from the coast. We're also keeping tabs on the region, and for the first time, our sister network in Uganda takes part in the team coverage. With Raymond Mujuni, he also joins us live from Kampala. But first, we begin with a public message from the Minister of Health. Now Kenya faces the biggest fight in its post-independence existence. The lives of its citizens are on the line. Its economy is threatened. Its culture and way of life is imperiled. The coronavirus threatens to kill us, damage our health, destroy our economy, and very fabric of our families. It will rain pain and suffering upon our unprotected heads in the coming days, weeks, and of course months. However, nothing shapes and brings our character than adversity and suffering.
The battle for our lives today will not be won by a powerful, privileged few. Every man, woman, and child in this country must become that great general. And our weapons are not necessarily guns and bullets. Our weapons are social discipline, sacrifice, and caring for the welfare and safety of those around you.
The coronavirus pandemic is changing the way we live, love, and express that love. Our expressions of greetings and farewell no longer make sense in this new world order. The handshake, the universal symbol of greeting and mutual understanding, has suddenly become absurd, the hug ludicrous, and walking around without a mask unreasonable.
In this disease is an opportunity for us to change the outcomes for ourselves, our families, our communities, and the nation at large. Yet in the last few days, we have seen varying degrees of obedience to the guidelines on how to stop the spread of COVID-19, from instructions by the Ministry of Health to self-quarantine if one has a history of travel, to the announcement of a nightly curfew and incessant calls to wash our hands, keep social distance, and wear masks. These simple guidelines are markers as to whether we are willing to gang up against this monster or want to continue life as usual and to allow it to decimate us.
Like soldiers coming home from war, we are likely to be physically battered and emotionally drained. Our healthcare system, our economy, our education, our agriculture, our businesses and our human resource are already starting to feel the pinch. And if projections are anything to go by, the worst is yet to come. While business executives and political leaders will offer policy direction in the new Kenya, the millions of hard-working citizens out there in the streets, slums and villages who are the untiring foot soldiers in this battle will determine what trajectory we take. In the middle of this sea of fortitude, however, are lessons that we must carry with a mixture of glee and shame.
And for instance, it is shocking that a country of about 50 million people has about 500 critical care beds, and even more shocking that 8 years since the devolution, there are counties with multi-million shilling governors' mansions and not a single intensive care unit bed. This, we hope, will force a reorganization of our expenditure priorities in the short term and give our dreams of universal health coverage the impetus it needs to take off. Our leaders, we hope, have realized that the world is such a small place and that a sneeze in faraway Wuhan, that's in China, can make their favorite hospital bed down in London unavailable. This, once again, is the time for us to be truly Kenyan. We live the spirit of our founding fathers by uniting against this pandemic and to breathe hope where there appears to be none. Together, we can and we will do it. The hashtag for this campaign is together. And now we move to our first story, our top story tonight. Private facilities providing COVID-19 testing have been cautioned that they must report their findings to the Ministry of Health after reports emerged that some members of parliament may have been infected with the coronavirus. According to the Ministry of Health, uncontrolled information only aids in spreading panic. NTV's Kenneth Muredi also reports that the country reported an additional 7 cases to put the national tally at 179.
Reports that 17 MPs may have contracted the coronavirus after testing sanctioned by Parliament has sent shivers down the spines of Kenyans and caused panic within government, especially after information came from a private testing institution. At today's daily briefing, the Ministry of Health cautioned these institutions against releasing any information without first checking with the ministry.
All private testing facilities, as a matter of law, and invoking the Public Health Act, are required to share their results with the Ministry of Health for the purposes of monitoring this situation and ensuring that the proper notification is done in accordance with international health regulations.
Though the information on the MPs has been disputed, with a number of them posting online that they had tested negative to clear the air, it is understood that President Uhuru Kenyatta has expressly directed a test of all government officials starting tomorrow. This comes alongside a planned mass testing.
As it stands today and at this time, we have no formal official reporting of these cases to the Ministry of Health. And additionally, we are rolling out mass testing. And this mass testing will actually include testing of the different institutions in the country. And at that time, we will then be able to relay to you what the situation may look like in Parliament or in judiciary.
With the furore caused by the reports of the purported leak, Lancet Kenya, the institution tasked with testing MPs, sent out a press release disputing reports of infections at Parliament and calling for prudence. They said the reports were misleading and false.
We are taking seriously matters of confidentiality and ensuring that those principles that are governed in medicine are still adhered to.
At the daily brief, the Ministry of Health noted the country had recorded 7 new cases, bringing the national tally to 179. 5 out of the new cases are from Nairobi, 1 from Mombasa and 1 from Uasin Gishu County. 2 of the 7 new cases are from quarantine facilities, while the other 5 are from contact tracing. 3 of the 7 are children below 15 years. 2 people have been discharged from hospital, while 1 is in critical condition and in the ICU. As per their age distribution, 3 are below 15 years. 49 cases are between 15 and 29 years. 114 cases are between 30 to 59 years, while 13 cases are above 60 years. Out of the 7 new cases the government has announced today, it has said that 5 of those cases were picked up by its surveillance team, meaning that there may be more other cases outside there if mass testing continues. It is now calling upon you to strictly adhere to the directives it is giving in an effort to break the chain of transmission.
What we do see coming in the days ahead is as we deploy our mass testing, using rapid testing, we will actually see the prevalence go up.
The government has also said it will set aside separate isolation units for medical personnel, as well as employ more doctors to supplement the 5,000 nurses announced last week.
We are hiring 500 more doctors to help us combat this menace.
Further, Kenyans with oxygen cylinders at home have been asked to give them to the government for usage in the event the cases spur. Kennedy Muredhi, NTV.
Well, let's now bring out our team helping to count the cost of the pandemic tonight. The coastal counties of Kwale, Kilifi and Mombasa closed their entry and exit points beginning 7 p.m. That's about 2 hours, 9 minutes ago, while Nairobi is on its third day of containment. Eunice, how is this working out here in the metropolitan area?
Obey the curfew, stay indoors and do not go outside the Nairobi metropolis. That has been the government's rallying call, repeated day in, day out at each press briefing. It is the government's desperate move to curtail the further spread of COVID-19 disease in the country. These measures, however, are being blatantly disregarded in part of the city. I took a trip to some of these areas last night, and what I find out is quite frankly scary. Take a look.
There will be a daily curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning, with all movement by persons not authorized to do so or not being medical professionals, health workers, critical and essential service providers being prohibited.
The night gathers and our watch begins. We are on Thika Road, one of the busiest highways connecting the now contained Nairobi to other major towns. Now unusually underutilized due to the active curfew and most recent containment. It is exactly 6 hours after the onset of the dusk to dawn curfew on 8th of April. As expected, it's quiet, no movement, no cars, but we want to do a check and find out if Nairobians are following the laid down rules and if they're following the orders by the president. No movement from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. This is considering that Nairobi is one of the high-risk counties that has the highest number of COVID-19 cases reported this far. Let's take a look. We shift our focus and divert to Pipeline Estate in Nairobi Eastlands area. In the dark ages of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, defiance of some is prominent, a total disregard of the dusk to dawn curfew. Boda riders and their passengers calculating routes, the thickest of the curfews within the estates. Other than defying the movement, no masks. Life here seems to be going on as usual. The only disruption perhaps an oncoming vehicle, but only because they don't know if it is the law enforcement or fellow lawbreakers. Police officers were here about 2 to 3 hours after the onset of the curfew, but as soon as their now mastered patrols were done, it's back to business as usual. Shops operate up until midnight. We understand that a majority of these are selling cat to keep the defaulters of the curfew awake and imbibers of the night alert. Windows wide open, chit-chats and purchase going on. For those with a slight remainder of cautiousness, a cardbox surfaces to keep business running. The other businesses of the dark too go on as they have before the COVID-19 disease. The police have been accused of laxity, this after they were accused of using excessive force to enforce the curfew. While other Kenyans are tucked behind their walls to keep the spread of the virus away, socialization goes on in this estate, the chills of the night braced by the warmth of bonfire defying the social distancing rule. And with the spread of the virus now at the community level, this blatant disregard of the law and the laxity in its enforcement means that this courtship dance with potential death in these estates could very well rope in those who are fastidiously following the directive. It means that the next public space that these night owls may patch once daylight come may very well be the right next to you. Eunice Omolo, NTV, Nairobi. Where the law enforcement agencies have their work cut out, the ultimate responsibility lies with each and every one of us, because ultimately, when it comes down to it, the real financial cost of treating the disease will be felt by the sick patient, and it isn't very cheap. Lois.
Eunice, at the moment, the government is bearing the cost of treating those who test positive in government hospitals, but with the increasing cases, it may soon be untenable, and the citizens may have to dig into their own pockets to stay alive. Then, and only then, will the real cost of treatment hit those affected. Here's a picture of just how this could affect households' financial plans. The journey to coronavirus treatment begins at testing. The government has identified 2 criteria to identify those who qualify for testing. 1, a possible case can be suspected if one presents with coronavirus symptoms, which include a cough, fever, tiredness, difficulty in breathing, or history of travel to coronavirus hotspots. Those who've come contact with a COVID-19 patient are also eligible for testing. The first cost incurred is to transport the suspect case from their home to a quarantine facility. Procedurally, a suspect case is picked and transported to a quarantine facility using an ambulance. Medics say this will cost a patient between 3,000 to 5,000 Kenyan shillings if using an ambulance from a private hospital. This cost is shouldered by the government if the patient will use an ambulance from a public hospital.
Now, an ambulance is not just a vehicle. It comes together with certain supportive equipment and personnel that make it effective for use. For example, if you're using a road ambulance, you'd like there to be paramedics. These are specially trained healthcare personnel. So the cost altogether for this, if you look at very many private actors within the healthcare industry, ambulances can charge anything between 3,500 for a public sector ambulance to upwards of 15,000 to 20,000 shillings, depending on the distance, for private sector ambulance.
At quarantine facilities, it is mandatory to test all the suspect cases. Only yesterday, CS Health Mutahi Kagwe announced that the government can now afford a mass testing for COVID-19 thanks to a new technology at Kemri. These will see Kenya move to 35,000 tests a day from 600 tests a day previously. The cost of testing one sample for COVID-19 is between 7,000 to 15,000 Kenyan shillings in a private health facility. Again, for those who have their samples taken to a public health facility, the government will foot this bill. However, medics are worried about the government's sustainability in free testing for COVID-19 in the event of mass spread of coronavirus.
At the beginning of the week, he reallocated upwards of 2 billion shillings for the fight against the COVID disease. I'm persuaded that in terms of marshalling the resources necessary to ensure that all citizens can access quality and reliable healthcare during this period of this pandemic, I'm more than convinced that the government is up to the task.
While a possible case for coronavirus is awaiting their results following testing, they are required to stay at a quarantine facility for 14 days at their own cost. However, those who test positive will now incur yet another cost in isolation and treatment if they choose private medical facilities. Granted that there is no absolute medication, the cost of treatment will vary from patient to patient depending on drugs and equipment used to treat a patient. Government facilities treat COVID-19 for free. At isolation and treatment stage, the costs will keep varying from patient to patient as different cases will respond differently. Those with disease severity may at this point require admission into intensive care units. Usually, government hospitals charge between 20,000 to 100,000 Kenyan shillings for ICU patients a day, depending on the patient's condition. Private hospitals charge between 50,000 to 200,000 Kenyan shillings a day, depending on the patient's presentation. According to the Insurance Regulatory Authority, licensed insurance companies under their umbrella had indicated they will support their clients in the wake of COVID-19. IRA says it has so far not received any complaints from Kenyans on the same. Lois Wangoi, NTV, in the county of Uasin Gishu. And this situation could get here sooner than later. The government is now ready to carry out mass testing, targeting at least 35,000 cases every day. Going by the trend, the number of those who test positive are likely to peak soon. My colleague Eunice takes a look at the plans already in place to activate the mass testing of suspected COVID-19 cases.
The dark cloud of COVID-19 pandemic in the country. There's that darkness right before sunrise, the darkness that welcomes the orange horizon across the sky. We are there as a country, as our very own researchers from Cambridge can now test 35,000 samples in a day.
Having received special kits that will enable the HIV viral load machines and the gene experts used for point-of-care testing for tuberculosis, Kenya is now able to test up to 5,000 samples in a day with one machine. Before the acquisition of these machines, Kenya was able to test 600 cases daily. Now, with 7 labs across the country with the ability to test, these numbers will rise up to 35,000, greatly increasing the capacity to detect and contain those who are infected, slowing down further infections.
When coronavirus starts coming here the day after tomorrow, what will happen is that maybe we won't do 3,000 a day. Maybe we'll do 2,000 a day, because we want first to be confident with the virus, and so that we don't infect ourselves, to be very careful with it. The country would find it very challenging to provide sufficient samples to just run this machine alone. The number of humans you have to deploy out there in the field to collect sufficient samples to load this machine only is a significant number of humans, okay? So, to that extent, I can tell you without fear of contradiction that it is very difficult to saturate the capacity for testing for coronavirus in this country. It's very difficult.
The machines are especially efficient at detecting pulmonary TB, a respiratory illness like COVID-19.
Even the same preferential treatment as South Africa. So these kits were marked for South Africa. And it's only our friends in Berlin who made a lot of trouble and made a lot of noise, and maybe they held placards in the air, and then this guy said, okay, give Kenyans. Yeah. Otherwise they were going to South Africa, and this was going to be the second delivery to South Africa. The first one was 20,000 kits they already got, and we were forgotten.
For the machines to switch from HIV and TB tests to COVID-19, the government had ordered over 100,000 special kits from Switzerland with the support from the World Health Organization, Emergency Response Center, and the World Bank.
This machine that you can see can do 470 coronavirus tests in a day. 470, right? This one can do 470, this one 470, and that one 470, okay? These are medium throughput machines, they are not high throughput. But also what that tells you is that for all the tests that are being done in the country right now, 1.5 machines here are capable of doing them in a normal day from morning to evening. 1.5. Yeah? Automated testing.
The kits known as the Cobas SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV being the name of the COVID-19 disease-causing virus, and another COVID-19 machine helps the machines at Cambridge to not only test for HIV and TB, but now have the capability of testing for the novel coronavirus in a mass capacity. Other than speed in testing, there'll be a lot of change in how information is relayed about the new cases in the country. Cambridge has been playing a role in diagnosis and capacity building by training lab experts in various counties during this period of COVID-19 pandemic.
So you can't
The mass testing in Kenya has been affected by lack of coronavirus test supplies, ending in a long wait that has caused serious problems in the fight against the disease. The idea behind mass testing is suppression, that is to reduce the effectivity of the pandemic. Eunice Omolo, NTV, Nairobi.
Ken, the government is moving to conduct mass testing, and it is important to know where they will be looking. But Google is already collecting data.
Yes, indeed, Lois. And testing well is a good measure of determining the true picture of the infections in the country. Will also serve as a reinforcement and inform the government's added interventions in combating the virus. Already, Kenya, like any other country, has employed what is now popular and that is effective strategy in so many places, limiting movement and social interactions. Now, this strategy has worked in some of the worst hit countries. In the country like Kenya, my colleague Eunice Omolo found out early in that story and is still facing compliance challenges that, notwithstanding, Google Maps' latest data in Kenya shows a significant change in the movement behavior of its people. And let's begin with that now. And this is on the latest data from Google that show that the number of people visiting social places like restaurants, cafes, shopping centers, movie theaters has reduced drastically by a massive 45% compared to the baseline before the measures to combat COVID-19 were indeed announced. And let's see this other one. Now, this is about groceries and visiting pharmacies. Now, the visits to such places, including grocery markets, food warehouses, farmers markets, food shops, drugstores, and pharmacies have recorded a 33% drop, as is indicated by that data collected by Google. And now let's take a look at your movements. And the movements have also been monitored and registered a drop at public transport hubs such as bus stations and train stations. A 39% drop was recorded, even as the government advised you to avoid unnecessary travel in and out of your houses. And let's look at transit stations now. The directive to have those who can work from home seems to have had some measure of success in that implementation. Now, movements into places of work has also drastically reduced by about 22%, according to that data that was collected. Now, that's what we talked about. Let's now talk about residential areas now. This means that those staying at home increase. The data indicates a rise of about 70% in mobility trends in places of residence, denoting that many of you are now working from home and avoiding unnecessary travel. And of course, those are the numbers as collected by Google. Now, those numbers specifically of people staying at home are more likely to be more pronounced over this coming holiday season. And Kevin, we know this is usually a season of high human traffic where you are, that is the coast region. Is this the case this time around?
Well, Ken, as you know, Kilifi, Mombasa, and Kwale counties are in containment. So that means you cannot leave or enter into these particular counties. And we've seen this take a hit on several industries, including the hospitality industry. So if you are planning to come over to the coast region for the Easter holiday, you better shelve those plans for now and at least wait for the next 21 days. More details in my story.
Ordinarily, the annual migration to and from the coastal strip for Easter holidays would have been in full force, but these are no ordinary times. Gaining access into and out of Mombasa, Kwale, and Kilifi is not possible. The latest measure taken by the government to stem the spread of the coronavirus in Kenya. But even before that, the pandemic has already wreaked havoc on not just the hospitality industry, but the individual plans for holiday. Daniel Omari was looking forward to visit his folks up country.
Mimi kibinafsi nilikuwa nataka kusafiri kwenda nyumbani ili nijumuike na familia yetu, lakini ndivyo lazima nitii kama Mkenya mzalendo ule wito wa rais ya sisi kutosonga kutoka Mombasa.
The law enforcement officers reiterate that they will not allow any inter-county movements, locking Omari inside one of the virus hotspots in Kenya.
Wameumiza uchumi wa Mombasa, na kuna baadhi ya watu walikuwa wanakuja kupumzika na familia zao, kuenjoy Easter yao.
If that time finds you in Mombasa, you will not be able to get out of Mombasa until after 21 days. And if you are outside Mombasa after 7 p.m. today, you will not be able to come into Mombasa for the next 21 days.
The virus has thrown the hospitality industry into one of the toughest periods it's faced in recent times. Hotel chains are suffering due to a significant stumble in occupancy, and most of the players are now scaling down on their operations. At Travelers Beach Hotel, for instance, the general manager, Hilary Siele, tells us that they had stocked up for the coming Easter holidays, but now they have been forced to shut down a section of the hotel and even distribute some of the food items to staff.
During Easter holidays, Travelers Hotel is normally full. We have got two sections, Travelers Hotel and Travelers Club. Both sides are normally 100% occupancy. We will be talking now about spillovers, where we're going to do our overbookings. So, but currently it's absolutely the opposite.
Beach operators and other industry players who had planned for the Easter holidays will have to bear with the situation or even prepare for the worst if the numbers of the deadly virus get to unprecedented levels.
Tourism iko chini na inaendelea kwenda chini. Kutoka South Coast mpaka Lamu, mahoteli zinaumia, mahoteli zinafunga. Watu wanapelekwa kwa leave, both forced leave, both unpaid leave na both leave inaendelea.
The limitation of movement has thrown holiday makers into the spin, and also reeling from the effects of COVID-19 is the education sector and specifically the school calendar. My colleague Sharon Baranga is on the other side to shed more light on that. Sharon.
Kevin, the Easter holidays isn't the only schedule disrupted by the pandemic. It's now been 3 weeks since schools were closed in the wake of the pandemic landing in Kenya. Exam time has come and gone with no activity officially on the school calendar, and schools are heading to what would have been the close of the first term. Will the schedule recover the aftershocks of the pandemic? I spoke to a few stakeholders, and here is what they had to say.
It is 21 days and counting of school-going children being home in line with the measures to contain the coronavirus spread. Parents are coming to the end of their wits, running out of ideas on how to deal not only with the disruption of their own plans, but the school calendar, which has always been predictable. Ideally, families would have been readying themselves for the holidays after the children in schools finished sitting for their end-term exams and assessments. Those plans were thrown out of the window with the coming of the coronavirus into Kenya and the closure of schools.
One has to quote President Nana Akufo-Addo that if you ask me how to revive an economy, I can have a formula. But if you ask me to bring people back to life, I have no formula. The first cardinal responsibility of any responsible government is to protect its citizens. And that's what government is doing. Because when our people are healthy, when our people are safe, we can do anything. We can decide to postpone exams.
In an effort to try help learners, the government introduced educational programs currently running in the media, as parents are encouraged to take over and help their children learn. Some schools have gone a step ahead and introduced e-learning.
When we load education or important services such as education onto technology platforms, then if we are not very careful, what happens is that you will end up excavating the inequalities. So you have to think of technologies that reach many more people. And if you look at studies that have been conducted, one of the digital platforms that has been realized to be available is the radio. So radio will perhaps provide a bigger opportunity.
Amos Kaburu, an education expert, says the indefinite stay of learners at home might have consequences in future.
It's very easy to see the crisis in health compared to see the crisis in education. And a crisis in education has a lifetime impact. Because if, for instance, children are unable to read, they live with these consequences and for all their life.
Second term is expected to run from 4th May to 7th August. Third term is expected to start from 31st August to 30th October. The end of third term ushers in a new phase, that of national examinations for candidates in primary and secondary schools, who should be covering a syllabus for an examination that has already been set.
I think this is going to fundamentally shake how we have delivered, how we've thought, how we've packaged, and how we have delivered education to a large extent.
The Kenya Union of Post-Primary Education Teachers, KUPPET, wants the Ministry of Health to provide for the upkeep of the quarantined persons in schools in terms of bedding, food and other essentials. KUPPET also wants the Ministry of Health to fumigate the institutions and sterilize all facilities in the schools used by people who would have been quarantined there. Beyond the sanitary conditions of the school's infrastructure, there are more fundamental issues that stakeholders are grappling with. For instance, what happens to the school calendar once the pandemic is past? How will the learners recover lost instruction time? What happens to the school fees that had already been committed to the schools? Will the country's national examinations be affected? Answers that only the Ministry of Education can give guidance on. Sharon Baranga, NTV.
The shocks to the established schedules go beyond the classroom, Julians. The country's financial planning is also in the grips of this pandemic. What does this mean for the next financial year?
Right, Sharon, if the education calendar has been messed up, trust me, we're still trying to figure out what has actually happened to the financial planning and the national budget calendar. Now, this afternoon, the Parliament was supposed to sit and flesh out matters pertaining the tax laws amendment bill, but that didn't happen. And of course, what that has created is massive uncertainty amongst the public as to when the relief that was promised by President Uhuru Kenyatta will begin to kick in. I spoke to two opinion shapers on the matters of fiscal policy and tax and filed the following report. The National Treasury was expected to table the finance bill before the National Assembly by the end of this month. It would have been a stark departure from the past, where the Treasury would have 90 days after tabling the national budget to table the finance bill, which would then give life to the tax measures designed to raise the targeted revenue. COVID-19 has, however, thrown a spanner into the works, and now the country has an anticipated tax laws amendment bill which touches on just about everything from income tax to value-added tax, as well as excise duty. Some analysts argue that this brings a new dimension to Kenya's budget-making cycle.
Once this tax amendment bill is passed with the current provisions, then under the parliamentary standing orders, we cannot debate these issues again until at least 6 months pass.
So where exactly does this leave the budget-making cycle, given the fact that the window for stakeholder participation had closed and the National Assembly Budget Committee had already tabled its report on the budget policy statement? Opinion is divided as to whether we shall see a finance bill being targeted in the near term.
I foresee that there will not be the submission of another tax bill as a result. Maybe this year, maybe not even next year, unless it is to now mop up the mistakes that we are making in this particular bill, if it does go through.
Given the substantive amendments that we can see in this bill, we expect that the finance bill will not have substantive changes, because this tax laws amendment bill covers income tax, it covers VAT, it covers excise duty.
According to the budget policy statement tabled in the National Assembly, the budget for the financial year beginning June 2020 should be tabled on the floor of the August House on June 11th this year. With only 3 months between now and then, Kenyans will be watching to see how the present circumstances shape the road to this date. Now, we are granting tax relief on the one hand and trying to figure out how we'll mobilize revenue on the other hand. Leila Mohammed, if I may ask, where does this leave the Big Four agenda, which has been hyped quite a bit by the executive?
Julians, the grand plans to have the government spend some 450 billion shillings on the achievement of the President's Legacy Program. This is the Big Four agenda are now in jeopardy. The pandemic and the need to raise funds to combat it have had the government to make tough choices and move money from these projects to fight against the pandemic. Take a look.
The Big Four agenda is crafted to accelerate the realization of the overriding objective of Vision 2030.
2 months into his second and final term in office, President Uhuru Kenyatta unveiled an ambitious plan that had set a target of 25.74 million Kenyans who would be covered under the Universal Health Coverage Program by December 2018.
When you have a project like that, the government sets aside a budget for that.
With a budget of 400 million shillings to enable this become a reality by 2022, the government now finds itself at a point where it is being forced to alter its plans to respond to the new threat of COVID-19.
All the measures that are needed for COVID-19 are similar to the measures that were needed to provide universal health coverage for Kenyans.
We should improve our health facilities and assume that there may come a time when we cannot go outside for other treatment, but use whatever we have in this country.
We are not only addressing the issue of masks, we are not only addressing drugs, because it touches every nerve of the economy.
While the other three agendas seem to be taking a hit from the COVID pandemic, manufacturing is emerging as the unlikely beneficiary of this crisis. The government has had to increase its engagement with players in this field to meet the medical equipment and protective gear needs in the country.
There's a great opportunity for Kenya to localize a lot of the goods that it imports. That opportunity is not just because of the local market here, but also because of the regional market.
But while medical professionals are fighting a global health pandemic, environmental, climate and agriculture experts are bracing themselves for a possible food insecurity situation caused by a second swarm of desert locusts expected to ravage the country in a few weeks.
We were preparing to submit a supplementary bill in the course of the week, but we're still waiting for a signal from Parliament.
The current crisis facing the country are forcing President Uhuru Kenyatta to go back to the drawing board and play around with figures to be able to finance that important project. However, experts now say that this provides a proper learning curve for the government to be able to budget for the Big Four agenda going forward.
And moving forward, it's clear that our revenue streams are going to shrink. But how much, we're still studying.
Leila Mohammed, NTV. Now, while the Big Four agenda registers mixed fortunes during these uncertain times, our news editor Watson Karuma tells us of yet another sector that has not been left untouched by the COVID-19 pandemic that's sweeping through much of the world. The injuries here are perhaps the worst as seasons come to a halt and the futures remain in limbo. Here in Kenya, many have been affected, and as well as Liverpool in the UK, whose title reasons are now under a pandemic.
It feels like a red card, but it's more than a 2 or 3 match ban. It sounds like a team or athletes failing to qualify for competition. Only that it is all the clubs and all the athletes sitting this one out. Athletes have closed camps as footballers stay home, away from what they most enjoy doing. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought the world of sports to its knees. KPL is not in unfamiliar territory. The league has previously suffered numerous unwarranted breaks due to leadership wrangles, but even by its own standards, this is a different ballgame altogether.
The last couple of weeks have been very, very tough. Things have escalated pretty quickly.
You just have to sit and wait. Wait until when? We never know.
The 2019-2020 Kenyan Premier League season stands indefinitely suspended. Before the first case was reported last month, Gor Mahia had beaten AFC Leopards in the Mashemeji Derby to extend the lead atop the standings on 54 points. AFC Leopards coach Anthony Kimani acknowledges the trying times the world is currently going through.
I have been in constant communication with a lot of the players, and especially the captain, who has been bringing me up to speed with what or how the players are faring on in these tough times. Our fitness trainer came up with a program for the players to train and ensure that they don't slide into a sedentary lifestyle while at home.
Athletes are also not spared. Most of them were eyeing Olympic glory in Tokyo, Japan. The biggest event this year, the Olympic Games in Tokyo, Japan, will now take place next year.
I don't think next year is so far, so I'm just training. I'm still focused. I'm now training at home and training alone and staying at home with my family.
It has been a hard time
in side of athletics because all races have been cancelled. I finished Tokyo Marathon this year. My next race was to run Olympic. At least to keep your body fit, to keep your body to know that you are still an athlete.
Kenya was also set to host the IAAF World Under-20 Championships, which were scheduled for the 7th to the 12th of July. Preparations were already in top gear. The event has since been postponed. The return Safari Rally event to the World Rally Championships is also in limbo despite Kenya's huge financial investment into the event.
The dust will settle at some point. The COVID-19 pandemic will come to an end soon, hopefully. For a year that had such great promise, sports personalities and fans alike have to endure the agonizing wait for it to get better sooner rather than later. For now, it is files and files of old footage for us sports journalists. Watson Karuma, NTV.
Interesting, Watson Karuma there. The pandemic's effects are also being felt across the border. In Uganda, the country's leadership has been putting its foot down as it enforces the prevention measures. Raymond Mijungu, good evening this very cold evening here in Nairobi. Uganda did this very earlier than Nairobi. How differently are they doing in their fight against this COVID-19 pandemic?
All right, thank you so much, Leila. Of course, Kenya's cases are much higher than those of Uganda, but the terms that are being taken here are even much more than the ones in Kenya. I understand now from the presidential address that tighter restrictions have been placed on public exercising, which has now been banned, and also movement of motorcycles has also been banned. But also, the government has stepped up its relief of food items being given to
the 8th day of a complete lockdown in Uganda. The streets are empty, the shops are closed, and the army and police are patrolling and keeping roadblocks. Uganda now has 52 confirmed cases of COVID-19, majority of them carried from the United Arab Emirates. All of them, the Ministry of Health says, are stable and still undergoing treatment at 3 hospitals. But the more worrying numbers are those out of jobs and livelihoods. Uganda has a robust informal economy that relies on their small businesses to make ends meet. With a total lockdown, many are being pushed into dire situations. A hurriedly organized relief food distribution has been staged by government. Over the next weeks, it is hoped that over 1.5 million people in the city and its suburbs will be reached. The wildly spreading COVID-19 has pushed what was previously an active Ugandan social life into one of silence, homestaying, and anxious wait for official communication. Raymond Mijungu, NTV.
Uganda's president is still addressing, and if anything changes, we will be able to relay that to you. But right now, let me hand you back to Ken Mijungu in Nairobi.
Right. Thanks very much, Raymond Mijungu from Kampala, Uganda, and all the people involved in our team coverage tonight on counting the cost of the pandemic. Now, time now for our first break. But before we go for that break, take a look at this. A man in Hyderabad manufactured a single-seater vehicle that's shaped like coronavirus under the microscope to spread awareness about COVID-19 among Indians. He says he'll take this to the road to show people the dangers of the coronavirus. We'll be right back.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Hi there. Selena, it's great seeing you getting so much value for your money.
Well, it's important to save as much as you can.
You save everywhere, except for here. This is where you're throwing money down the drain.
How?
On these cleaning products.
Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilet. Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great savings too.
Online with ease and Optiven. Affordable land at your fingertip. Optiven. Refer a friend and Optiven. Download now to me. Optiven.
Experience the convenience of owning your property at the comfort of your phone. Download My Optiven app on Google Play Store or App Store and start your investment journey. What's even better, you earn extra cash when you refer a friend to download My Optiven app. Call 0740 400 400. Optiven, the pace setters in real estate. Simple and convenient.
Dettol's main objective is to help children protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs on your hands. Your hands collect germs that causes diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap that gives the best germ protection ever against many illness-causing germs.
Wash, wash, wash your hands. What you have to do is bath, bath, bath yourself. Dettol soap every day. Wash, wash, wash your hands. Birthday party. Birthday party. Birthday party. Birthday party. Are we not invited? We have gifts. Malaria. Mommy, pest. Rat.
Oh, die.
Party.
Compared to an ordinary spray, Mortein Doom Power Guard kills disease-causing pests instantly. Mortein Doom Power Guard.
This seems like the best option right now. Look, it's only for today until you fix your uniform.
Hey, bongo babe. Unaweza labda niweke karaka.
Sarah, hii ni nguo ya mamangu hii.
You could leave your ring here. You never know, accidents happen.
You're sweet. You know that?
Now I know, baby.
Experience the convenience of owning your property at the comfort of your phone. Download My Optiven app on Google Play Store or App Store. Call 0740 400 400. Optiven, the pace setters in real estate. Simple and convenient.
Shika storo kibao na 200% storo bonus. Piga simu zaidi, tuma SMS au nunua bundles ufikishe target yako leo. Pata 50% extra airtime unapo top up na kupiga star 544 star 2 star amount hash.
Well, 10 minutes to the top of the hour. We still have a lot of stories for you, and the coronavirus is changing the way we mourn the dead, as the country's first victim of the coronavirus was finally laid to rest at his home in Kibomet village, that's in Trans Nzoia. Only 15 people attended that ceremony that lasted only 10 minutes, as public health officials were at hand to ensure everyone or everything that came into contact with the casket was sanitized.
Just as in any other burial ceremony, mourners gathered at this home to mourn the loss of a man whom they knew well, loved, and whose loss saddened them.
Alikuwa ni mtu generous, tisi wote, mandugu zake, hata wa ukoo, tumepata faida yake.
Unlike other burial ceremonies that many Kenyan families have become accustomed to, the presence of public health officials, police officers and county administrators took charge of handling the body, with all safety precautions taking precedent before the body could be moved. 15 close family members and friends sat through a strictly 10-minute burial service before the body was moved to the graveside. Even here, Public health officials were not taking any chances and fumigated the casket at the burial site to avoid any traces of the virus sneaking through to those in attendance.
The people who are around the 15 have adhered to the laid down guidelines on social distancing.
Musundi, who was the first victim of COVID-19 in the country, was finally being laid to rest after weeks of government laying down plans on how best to handle the bodies of COVID-19 deaths. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
But amid the COVID-19 gloom, there were moments of joy, obviously, such as this one in Muranga, where two became one, as witnessed by an audience of only 7. Now, the couple from Muranga exchanged their vows in a simple ceremony that lasted only 30 minutes. Naomi Sampao has the story.
In a time increasingly marked by isolation, a small ceremony brought two together and a glimmer of hope.
I give you this ring.
It was a brief and tender ceremony at the Muhito AIPCA Church to join together Lewis Kariuki and Rachel Wanjugu in holy matrimony. This was in line with the government's directive to have less than 15 people attending burials and weddings.
We thought we were going to have a mammoth wedding at PCA high level, but that was not possible because of the situation we are experiencing today.
Due to the pandemic COVID-19, things changed dramatically, and things that have to be done differently because of prevention of the infection of this disease.
My expectations were not like that because we had an expectation of 1,000 people. But
after exchanging the vows, they went home for the wedding reception. Their parents handed them gifts and prayed with them. For the two, their parents' blessings and that of the church was the foundation they needed for their union. They have had to cancel their honeymoon plans to travel to Seychelles as well. There's been no time for love in the time of coronavirus, as many couples have had to shelve their plans to adhere to social distancing. But this couple advises that the virus should not put anyone's life on hold.
When you're mkona maharusi, just go ahead. Yeah, it is not a thing to limit you. Yeah, so just go ahead, do the wedding. On the bright side, this couple says this pandemic has saved them the financial constraints that come with planning a big wedding. And as they settle into life together, they remain confident that love endures in sickness and in health. Naoma Sampao, NTV.
Now that couple has taught us very important lessons. It's possible just to have a handful of people attend your wedding, and it's indeed a wedding, as long as there's a man of God to conduct this ceremony. Time now for another short break. The business news is up next, but here's something else you would quickly see before we take that break. Hundreds of monkeys, dogs, and domestic animals like cows have taken over the streets, leading an animal offensive taking advantage of deserted streets as the country remains under a coronavirus lockdown. With India's 1.3 billion population and tens of millions of cars conspicuously by their absence, stray domestic animals and wildlife have also moved to fill that void. Of course, those other pictures and anywhere now, there are memes around with people in confinement and animals walking around. We take that short break. We'll be right back.
Selena!
Toto, where's mommy?
Today's a toilet day.
What? Oh.
Selena!
Toilet day?
Tomorrow we're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation.
It's a toilet, not a white shirt. Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with bleach and detergent, it still won't be party ready.
Impossible.
Challenge. Harpic 10X. Even if you use bleach and detergent 10 times, they won't give you the same sparkling clean toilet that Harpic 10X will give you.
Wow!
Harpic 10X. Harpic, Kenya's #1 toilet cleaner.
Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white clothes, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
Sona moja imetengenezwa kwa njia spesheli ili kupambana na maumivu kwa haraka. Sona moja ina aspirin kama kiungo. Sona moja, kitulizo kamili. Maumivu yakizidi, pata ushauri wa daktari.
The first time I held you, I fell in love with you, and I knew there was something great in you. I can't help but think of the legacy you will leave. I'm proud of who you've become. From mere ambitions to bigger challenges, from having that dream to actually living it, from moving out to settling your family in this dream home.
Every day, we endeavor to provide you with the best real estate solutions. Own your dream home at Victory Gardens, just 10 minutes drive from Kitengela town. Call us today on 0790 300 300.
NTV Business News in association with KCB Internet Banking.
Well, let's make sense of this sense, and we begin with the Cooperative Alliance of Kenya, which has urged its members to suspend interest on existing loans on their members, especially for those in sectors which have been heavily hit by the coronavirus pandemic. Victor Kiprop reports on the proposal, which, if adopted, promises a sigh of relief to members of the cooperatives, some of who are already withdrawing their savings to cater for their basic needs as the country economy takes a beating from this pandemic.
As the Kenyan economy continues taking a beating from the coronavirus pandemic, many Kenyans are finding it hard to survive, necessitating interventions which can help soften the burden for many whose livelihoods have been adversely affected.
We urge societies to consider suspending interest on existing loans during this period of economic downturn.
The umbrella body wants its 14,000 members to waive interest on loans advanced to their borrowers, with more priority given to those sectors hard hit by the pandemic.
We have not been affected on equal measures. Some of our societies, their members who are in the aviation sector, in hospitality sector, in horticultural sector, they have been heavily affected. So we are calling upon other societies to see how we can be able to support our brothers in those society, in those cooperatives.
With more Kenyans losing their jobs or having their income sources depressed, a number of SACCOs are reporting increased cases of members withdrawing their savings in order to cater for daily needs, sending jitters across the sector.
We are in a better position that we will soon overcome this epidemic, and therefore we do not need to panic or to rush to the cooperative societies to withdraw our savings or our deposits, because tomorrow is coming.
The Alliance, in partnership with the State Department for Cooperatives, has already constituted the Cooperative Coronavirus Response Committee to coordinate mobilization of resources and extension of support to members who have been critically affected by the pandemic. Last month, the government allowed cooperatives to pay out dividends and interest on deposits to members without subjecting them through prerequisite annual general meetings. Victor Kiprop, NTV Business.
And persons operating salons and barbershops like Mebaba Roba are expected to come under intense scrutiny as the government tightens the measures aimed at curbing the spread of COVID-19. Now, Health Cabinet CAS, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, says all barbershops and salons will now be routinely monitored to ensure they adhere to all measures adopted, as the country's total tally of confirmed cases rose to 179 as of today. Salons and barbershops provide employment for thousands of Kenyans.
Attending to their clients, we must also ensure that our salons and barbershops have hand sanitizers and their clients actually maintain social distancing and they practice basic hygiene in their operations.
Right, a very important message there, but let's take a look at the financials.
NTV Business News in association with KCB Internet Banking.
We can always talk about your account online whenever you like.
Register at your nearest branch for KCB Internet Banking today.
Send M-Pesa up to 1,000 Kenya shillings for free. Avoid contact with paper cash. Safaricom is for you.
Sensitivity is a short, sharp pain that people experience when they have something hot or cold getting to the nerve of the tooth, causing that discomfort. If the sensitivity is left alone, it may get worse. Dentists recommend Sensodyne to their patients. It's able to get inside the tooth and calm the nerve of the tooth down. And the proof's in the results. It works.
Usingoje hadi dakika ya mwisho. Pimwa kwenye hospitali ya serikali. Matibabu inapatikana bila malipo. TB inakinga na tiba.
Shika storo kibao na 200% storo bonus. Piga simu zaidi, tuma SMS au nunua bundles ufikishe target yako leo. Pata 50% extra airtime unapo top up na kupiga *544*2* amount hash.
Right, let's take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. Thousands streamed out of the Chinese city of Wuhan Wednesday after a 76-day lockdown on the birthplace of the coronavirus was lifted, offering a ray of hope even as Europe and the United States faced rising deaths and crippling economic pain. Now, closer home, Ethiopia declared a state of emergency to fight the corona pandemic, which has so far infected 55 people and resulted into 2 deaths. NTV's Judith Cherono has that update from around the world.
Voicing joy and excitement from behind face masks, tens of thousands of people fled Wuhan after a more than 2-month travel ban on the Chinese city where the coronavirus first emerged was lifted. Previously, quiet train and bus stations bustled as an exodus began from the city of 11 million, with some passengers wearing hazmat suits. Wuhan led the world with an unprecedented quarantine lockdown on January 23rd in a bid to stop the spread of the then mysterious respiratory virus. But while the pandemic continues to worsen in many other parts of the world, with the global death toll surpassing 80,000, the quarantine measures have appeared to pay off in Wuhan and other parts of China. At the city's Hankou train station, a robot whizzed through crowds of passengers, spraying their feet with disinfectant and playing a recorded message reminding them to wear face masks. Passengers also had to submit to temperature checks and show a green health code on their phone, meaning they are considered healthy, allowing them to travel. In Saudi Arabia, municipal authorities deployed drones to measure the body temperature of shoppers in Buraida in the north-central Al-Qasim region. The drones are fitted with artificial intelligence-enabled thermal cameras. Kuwait, which has largely locked down the country, sent drones to the skies in mid-March to broadcast messages in multiple languages. Meanwhile, in northern Italy, the mayor of Bergamo decreed that men would shop on Mondays
Wednesdays, Fridays and Sundays, while women would shop on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays, effectively segregating shopping days by gender in a further bid to halt the spread of coronavirus. Ignoring the ordinance in the town of 4,500 carries a penalty of €400.
And as you can imagine, we still have sports for you because the sports desk has been working 7 minutes past the hour. We're back with sports. Stay with us.
Molfix breathable surface developed with airsoft technology is very soft and provides the best Molfix skincare.
I found the best diaper for my baby's sensitive skin.
All babies deserve a high-quality diaper. You should also try Molfix.
When you're facing stubborn stains, you're always in a fierce fight. Clean Soft kicks out stains. Kimateki.
For a better tomorrow, don't forget to do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate every night.
Smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong teeth.
Breastfeeding ruins the shape of your breasts. This myth is false. Feeding your baby at night makes breastfeeding easier. Yes, this is true. Small breasts can't produce enough milk. This myth is false.
Kiss Kids diapers. Kiss Kids, no rashes. Kiss Kids, no rashes. Bye-bye rashes. Buy diapers. Choose Kiss Kids.
This seems like the best option right now. Look, it's only for today until you fix your uniform.
Hey, bongo babe. Unaweza ifanyia labda niweke karaka.
Sarah, hii ni nguo ya mamangu hii.
You could leave your ring here. You never know, accidents happen.
You're sweet. You know that?
Now I know, baby.
Experience the convenience of owning your property at the comfort of your phone. Download My Optiven app on Google Play Store or App Store. Call 0740 400 400. Optiven, the pace setters in real estate. Simple and convenient.
Because it's time for sports, 10 minutes past the top of the hour. Former Football Kenya Federation Vice President Twaha Mbarak has appealed to FIFA to engage the Kenyan government directly on the issue of the FKF election. This is after FIFA postponed its meeting with Sports Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed, FKF President Nick Mwendwa, and other football stakeholders to next month.
Mimi nilikuwa napenda kuwashauri washikadau wote wa hapa nchini wawe watulivu na tungoje FIFA ambao ni shirikisho la soka duniani na serikali yetu na stakeholders ambao wataweza kukutana ili kuangalia matatizo ambayo yamekumba uchaguzi wetu. Na pia ningeshauri kwamba shirikisho hili la kandanda la dunia ni lazima likutane na serikali yetu ili kuweza kukubaliana na kufuata pia sheria ambazo zimetolewa na mahakama yetu, na ndio tuweze kupata way forward ya uchaguzi wetu.
Away from that, the English Premier League could lose about £1 billion if the 2019-2020 season cannot be completed because of the coronavirus pandemic, which forced the season to be halted indefinitely. EPL Chief Exec Richard Masters has warned of further losses if that situation deepens and extends beyond the season. Now, top flight players are currently negotiating on a club-by-club basis